Hey everybody, welcome back. Välkommen tillbaka. Tack för sist. It was a hot one today. I forgot to put my sunscreen on. I don't usually forget that when it gets hot, but that's why I'm so damn red. Anyway, so I was listening to a podcast / YouTube video today. I've heard of this guy before, and people have actually recommended it to me based on some of my videos. It's called Mormon Stories. John DeLynn, I think that's how you say his name. Today I was listening to one. He had this Seventh-day Adventist, ex-Seventh-day Adventist lady on, and I got about 2/3 of the way through part one. I'm going to listen to the rest of it tomorrow. It really got my intrigue. I found it very interesting, especially how many similarities there are between them and Mormons. But it got me thinking. I don't know why this popped into my head while I was listening to it. Something they said just kind of stuck this in my head. I'm like, I left the Mormon church, but has the Mormon church left me? Now, I want to say, going into this video, I try to keep my videos clean. I try not to cuss every once in a while. One slips out. I'm not trying to be crude or anything like that, but what I'm going to discuss today is PG13. Let's just put it that way. I usually skirt around stuff like that, but in this video, I want to talk about some things that I just haven't really discussed in any kind of detail before. Not like it's verboten, it's just, I don't know. I've stayed away from it, but I am going to talk about some things today a specific thing that, if you're like a kid watching this, go watch something else. Come back later. Thank you for watching, but, or if, you're easily offended by, certain talk, maybe you should come back later too. It's nothing horrible. I just want you to be prepared going into it, that I'm going to be kind of frank. And a lot of it is based on listening to this video today from Mormon Stories. The guy is very well spoken. It says Dr. John, did I say John DeLynn? I think that's right. I don't know if he's a medical doctor or a PhD. Doesn't matter. I like his style, and the video got me thinking about, like I said, I left, but has it left me? And some of you have commented about this, like I stand up for the church, I defend it. I say all the time, I still have a lot of respect for a lot of parts of the church and family that are in it. But there are things that bother me. Specifically, and this is something they were talking about, when it comes to children. If you were raised LDS or any kind of strict religion, now they were flat out, I don't know if they were calling the Mormon church a cult, but they were definitely calling the Seventh-day Adventist a cult. I don't have an opinion on that either. I think that's for everybody to make up their own mind on. Cult has such a negative connotation to me, and every religion has some negative aspects to it. But I know I'm tightroping here. I'm on the fence. And my dad used to say to me all the time when I left the church, or if it had, if we were talking politics or whatever, he's like, get off the fence, pick a side, blah, blah, blah. But I think sometimes it's appropriate to be on the fence about certain things. That being said, like I said, if you were raised LDS, Mormon, you understand that there's a bit of fear that is put into, not a bit. When I say, is the Mormon church still in me, even though I've left the Mormon church? The answer is yes. Some of you have pointed that out to me before, and I was like, eh. But there's things, when you're raised that deeply as I was in the church, and you're told certain things are really bad, like really bad. And look, I'm just going to get right to it. They talked a lot on this specific video about masturbation. There, I said it. It's out there. And what a negative thing it is, I guess, in that church too, in the Seventh-day Adventist church. It's a big no-no. Anything sexual, which is very similar to Mormonism, is just a big no-no. Looking back on it now, I remember going into interviews, starting at 8 years old when you get baptized. Maybe before that, but I don't remember anything before that. 8's a little young to be talking to somebody about that. But I remember when I was 12, you become a deacon in the Mormon church. When you're 14, you become a teacher. When you're 16, you become a priest. When you're 18, an elder, and so on and so on. And then you can progress through it. I don't have a problem with any of that. I don't have a problem with having an interview with a bishop. A bishop is the leader of your local congregation. And then the local congregation, called a ward, several of them combine to become a stake. So, you'll have a semi-annual stake conference. Like the church overall has the big general conference twice a year in Salt Lake City. I actually went to it once. It was cool. The only thing that wasn't cool, we were in the upper seats in the tabernacle, and you're crammed in there like sardines. I mean, it's a bench, and they just squish you in there. I didn't like that part. So I never went again, just because it was physically uncomfortable. It was kind of cool to be there. But yeah, the bishop is the one that interviews you. When you go on a mission, the stake president also interviews you. And I remember very clearly, it's so ingrained in my head, them asking about that habit. And I just would never say anything to them about that kind of stuff. I was like, I felt so invaded when they would ask me that. I'm like, that's so personal. Who are you to ask me that? And one thing I found interesting in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and I'm going to finish this video, found it very interesting. I don't remember the woman's name, blonde woman, short blonde hair. She was raised in it, and she left when she was 18, which was, 30 years ago. I'm guessing around there. They don't have this confession thing. The Catholic Church has confession. I think most churches have some kind of confession. In the Mormon Church, they call it repenting. So you go in and you confess to the bishop. You can do this on your own. You have your kind of normal interviews that you go in for different levels of whatever that are kind of mandatory. But, if you've done something that you feel is wrong in the church, according to the church standards, you can request to have an interview. Now, granted, everything I'm telling you is based on at least 25 years ago. So I know some things have changed. This is based on my experience. But you can go to the bishop's secretary and say, I'd like to see the bishop. And you can go in and confess your sins and, in theory, receive repentance, absolution, whatever you want to call it. And there's really never any strings tied to it, at least in my experience, unless it was something pretty bad. Now, one exemption from that, when I was at BYU, this is kind of a funny story. I won't go into the details of why this happened, but this is kind of a funny story. So one of my best friends and we must have gotten called in, because in college, I would have never said, as whatever I was, 21, 22-year-old, I would not have gone in and say, hey, I'd like to see the bishop. I got called in. My buddy went in first. I'm not going to say who it is, but he came out, his eyes were red. You could tell he'd been crying. And when he confessed, he cried through the whole thing. And the bishop just slap on the wrist, you're done, you're fine. And I know what he was in there confessing for, because we talked to each other about all these things. So I know exactly what he was doing. I went in, something more minor than what he was confessing, and we're not talking about like legal sin. We're not talking about like robbery or hurting somebody or something like that. We're talking about the spiritual sins. I went in having done less than what he did, but I was very stoic. I was like, I'm going through the motions. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I guess I didn't show any remorse. And he put me on probation, which could have got me kicked out of BYU. I had to check in with him a couple times during that semester. I'm like, wait a second. He goes in and you just let it slide. I know what he did. It was worse than what I did. And what I did, I get put on probation. I guess I kind of get it. Although I know this guy and I'm pretty sure it was an act, but whatever. So going back to my first real interview where they get into this stuff when I was 12 years old. And I remember this bishop very clearly, did not like the guy. He gave me the creepy vibes outside of his office. And when you go into these interviews, whether you're a guy or a girl, it was one-on-one. Now I know they have changed that. Thank heaven they have changed it, because I think it's so creepy that, some 15-year-old girl goes in with some 50-year-old dude and confesses sexual sins. That's beyond creepy. I have a brother who's also left the church, but he was it wasn't a bishopric. In smaller congregations, say like 100 people, they call it a branch. And he was in a branch presidency. And so he was in there with a couple other dudes when specifically young women would confess. And he told me all the time, he says, I got such creep vibes from it, from the other guys, and felt so bad for these girls that were going in and confessing. So I'm glad they've changed that. I think it was awful that it was ever like that, because I think most of these guys, most of these bishops are good people that are trying to do the right thing. I really do. The guy that runs Mormon Stories made it sound like it happens, the bad stuff happens way more than I'm aware of, at least when I was in the church. And I can't speak to that. All I can speak to is my own experience. And from my experience, most of these guys are good dudes. At least that's what I felt. But there are bad guys that get called to these callings too. And I've known about a couple of them. I had a friend, I don't want to go into any details, who had a close young family member get molested by one of these bishops. Years ago, I won't say where, I won't say when, it does happen. And it happens in every church. Even though I have a lot of respect for the LDS Church, and I think most of these people are good, you can't weed out all the bad people. There are bad people everywhere. Most people are good. I say it all the time. I love the Luke Bryan country song, Most People Are Good, because I really believe that. I travel all over the country. I run into people everywhere of all stripes, and almost everybody I ever meet is just a good person. Now, like today, for example, there are bad people out there. I'm working at a storage facility, painting the storage facility. The aisles are not real big. The speed limit's 5 miles an hour. This jackass, I got all my painting equipment out, 4 sprayers. I'm going back and forth across the aisle. I got headphones on. There are other people there. He was doing like 45 miles an hour, and I'm not exaggerating. And I was turning around as he came ripping by. And I was like, if I had walked out just a couple of feet, he sees me there, he would have killed me. That's a bad dude, in my opinion. But back to my specific case with this specific guy, I'm pretty sure he passed away several years ago. And there's people watching this might know who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to throw names out there. I don't feel like that does any good, and I don't have any kind of proof that anything bad happened. I heard rumors. He didn't really do anything bad with me. He just gave me creepy vibes. The way he talked about it, here comes some more PG13 stuff. I'm going to use some euphemisms here because I think it's important to the story. So as a 12-year-old, I don't think I even knew what that was at that point. Masturbation. I honestly don't think I knew what that was. I don't remember when I hit puberty. I want to say probably 13, 14 years old. So it was pre that. And he asked me, I remember him, I can remember this so clearly. He asked, do you have a problem with masturbation? And I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know the word. I was like, what? And he says, I'm sorry, here it comes. He says, jacking off didn't mean anything to me. So he literally, I'm not going to do the motion. He did the motion and used the phrase again. And I was horrified. I kind of knew what he was talking about at that point. I was like, what is happening here? By the time I went in for my interview when I was 14, I was fully aware of what was going on. And I was just, I don't know what you're talking about. No, never. Don't know anything about what you're talking about. When I was 16, when I was 18, when I was 19, going on a mission. I was like, I always felt like it was just such an intrusion into my life. Now, some of these guys, one, for example, I know was a good guy. I know he was just trying to do what he was supposed to do. And that's when I went on my mission. But he grilled me. He would not let it go because I just kept saying no. I'm like, I would not tell you regardless. I'm not talking about this with you. You don't want to let me go on a mission? Fine, I won't go on a mission. But I am not getting into this with you. Should I tell this story? Let's just, yeah, I think I'll pass. Maybe I will. See if I can get my courage up. So this is a thing that goes on kind of your whole life. I have somebody else, let's just say they're close to me. I'm not going to say if it's a man or a woman. I'm not going to say where they are. I'm not going to say how old they are. I'm not going to say anything because I know there are people who would figure out who I'm talking about. But this person went in for a confession, repentance, as an adult. And the bishop grilled this person quite hard. And at some point, this person, I got to be careful not to say he or she, because this person didn't turn around, but just said flat out to the bishop, do you do any of these things? Can I ask you about this stuff? And the bishop was taken so aback by it that he just kind of moved on. Now, I was never that brave. I just deny. No, I don't do anything. I'm a monk. I'm just... But here's where it comes back to, has the church left me? Is it out of me? And here's why it's not. I still carry some of that guilt. They make you feel like you're dirty. If you, for instance, masturbate. I could tell a joke right here, but it's probably not appropriate. They make you feel like you're so dirty. Like I said, I always just was like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, I don't know. No, I don't even know what that is. Even as like a 19-year-old, I don't know what you're talking about. But the way they would grill me about it, I could tell was just it's a dirty, nasty thing. And when I was listening to that podcast today, the YouTube video on Mormon Stories, that's one thing she said that really triggered this in my head is they make you feel dirty and like you're just a horrible person. Like I literally thought, now I will not go into detail here, but as say a 17-year-old dude and you got a 17-year-old girlfriend, if you would, like I did confess a couple of things and it ended up being okay, but getting to the okay part, was definitely a process of you did something really bad. What I've never understood is all of these religions, I believe, say these are natural urges that you have to overcome. Well, who gave me these urges? God, you know? And I think they're good natural urges. Now, there are people that use them to bad effect and are horrible human beings. You know, whether you're talking about rapists or, you know, child molesters or whatever. I hope there's special hell for people like that. I'm just talking about normal things that guys and girls do together. You would get made to feel like you were just so dirty. When I went on my Mormon mission, that's the biggest grilling I got, period. Now, I had lived a pretty chaste life as far as Mormon standards are concerned, because they had me, I'm not even exaggerating here, they had me so scared that I would go to hell if I did these things, or I wouldn't be able to go on a mission. My parents would be humiliated and embarrassed, and people would be like, why didn't he get to go? There's a story I need to tell sometime, because there was a guy in my ward as I was getting ready to go on a mission. And the reason I heard about this at all is because a friend of mine's dad was pretty high up in the church in that ward. And this guy had come to him and said, don't let this guy go on a mission. He's a bad guy, which I definitely wasn't a bad guy. I was a good dude. You know, I drank a little in high school. I smoked a little bit of weed in high school. But as far as, I don't want to get into that. I was pretty good as a Mormon kid. And this guy, I'll tell this story sometime in more detail, because I had lots of interactions with this dude. This guy turned out to be horrible, like go to prison for the rest of your life kind of dude. And I think he passed away not real long after that. I have to be careful, because I don't want to put names, places, specifics out there. I want this to be a generalization, just about how, and I know it happens in the Catholic Church and Protestant Church and Baptist Church and all that kind of stuff, on varying levels. Sorry, I got this notification up here. But I really thought the Mormon Church was kind of exclusive and really making you feel dirty about the sexual stuff. And after listening to a lot of this YouTube video today from this woman, and how it seemed even worse in that church, like even when you got married, there were certain things, and you know, the Mormon Church has been pretty good at once you're married, staying out of the bedroom. That wasn't always the case. In fact, John DeLynn, is that what I said his name is? I think that's right. Said that in the early 80s, the prophet at the time, which had to have been Spencer W. Kimball, put a ban on certain things in the bedroom. It did not go over well. I didn't even know about this, and I guess it disappeared after 10 months, according to John. I didn't even know about it. Of course, in the real early 80s, you know, I graduated in 81, so if it was like 80, 81, I was 16, 17 years old. I wouldn't have heard about it. And I guess a lot of the members were like, you know, stay out of our bedrooms. That's none of your business. And it just kind of went away. Now, there are other things that are kind of faded away. When I was a kid, it was very frowned upon to drink Coke, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew, anything with caffeine was very frowned upon. If I went to a friend's house that was like, I drank Coke all the time. I would, you know, when I was old enough to buy my own stuff, my buddies and I would go buy Cokes, and I drank them all the time. But I would never drink one around my dad or my mom. My mom, I don't know though she would have said much, but my dad would have not been happy about it. That seems to have faded away. I mean, it's still like coffee and tea, but if you're familiar with the word of wisdom, it's meat in excess. You're not supposed to eat meat in excess. Now, he said some things in this video today about Joseph Smith and Brigham Young that I want to do a little bit of independent research before I comment too much on it, because some of it I knew, some of it I'm hearing for the first time. And I do not want to spread false stuff. If I have no problem if I don't know something saying I don't know it. So I'm not gonna, just because he said it, he seems like a very intelligent dude that does his research, and I'm guessing it's probably true, but I still want to independently verify some of the things he said about them. I have very different opinions of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. I have problems with both in certain ways, but I have way more with Brigham Young. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. If any of you have grown up in a strict religion like that, where especially specifically the sexual things are so frowned upon, and in a way it makes me kind of sad and hurt, because let's face it, when we're teenagers, hopefully later teenage years, I definitely, with my own kids, I tried to really pound it into their heads, stay away from sex. You're too young. Wait till you find somebody you're in love with. I don't know the details of my kids' lives when it comes to that stuff. I don't want to know. But I was very clear on what I thought was the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. But I never, ever tried to make any of them feel like if they did something, they were dirty. I always said to them, if something happens and you're worried about it, or you're ashamed or whatever, come talk to me. I will not be mad at you. We'll talk this thing through together. And I've always felt like I had a really close relationship with all of my kids, and at times they did talk to me, and I was true to my word. I think my wife was. I love my parents. My parents are the greatest people on the planet. My dad is an amazing man, but I could never have gone and talked to him about these things. I would have got a lecture. I'd have been made to feel ashamed because he believes so strongly. I'm amazed at his faith. I really am. It does not get shaken. The only time I can ever remember it even coming close to being like shaken was many years ago, and it was more because I think he felt like he was, I don't know, being disrespected in his ward, or I won't get into. Yeah, he's just a good dude, but I could not have gone to him and talked about this stuff. It was impossible. For an example, just how spiritual, religious, whatever you want to call it, he was. He wasn't the dad in Footloose, John Lithgow, no dancing. He wasn't that at all. My dad's a fun guy. We golf all the time. We play pickleball. He's 83. He still golfs. He still plays pickleball. He swims every week. So he wasn't like that, but we had this, I don't know how it is now, but once a week on a weeknight, you would have what's called mutual. And I think it was 12 to 17-year-olds. So I could be off by a year, either way there. But you got divided into kind of your age groups, and you did kind of more fun stuff. Maybe play basketball or go snowmobiling. Like I was talking about the other few videos ago about how our scout he was also like a religious leader guy, would take us snowmobiling and shooting and stuff like that. We'd do fun things. Well, one of these nights in the church, it was around Halloween, somebody brought like a brutal slasher movie and showed all the kids. I mean, way inappropriate. In a church, I mean, it wasn't in the chapel. It was in the gymnasium of the church, but it's in the church. And I remember watching it, and I was not very good with that kind of stuff anyway. It freaked me out, which is another thing I want to get to here in a minute. Sorry, this is a little bit longer video. He heard about this. My mom was one of the leaders, and she did not approve of this, and I think she tried to put a stop to it. The next day, so this must have been a Saturday, well, the next Sunday. Once a month, they have what's called fast and testimony meeting, and anybody can get up during the church meeting, the main church meeting, and give their testimony, which is kind of your saying what you believe in and you're thankful for, and anybody can get up. Little kids get up. My dad got up and he lectured the ward, and hardcore, and rightfully so. It was way out of line, but he was so offended by that. I was like 15 and I was kind of offended. But that's another thing that has the Mormon church left me. When it comes to that kind of stuff, kind of scary, evil stuff, they really drill stuff into you that doesn't go away. I mean, it stays with you forever. I've talked about some of the experiences I had on my mission that were pretty creepy. And when you have that in your background on top of that, I know people that can go to any movie, doesn't matter what the movie is, doesn't matter how evil it is or gory. Like, I don't have a problem with slasher movies anymore. That doesn't bother me at all. But there are certain movies I will not go to. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with my upbringing and just the values / what's the right word? Morals, spiritual teachings that you're taught. To stay away from certain things. And some of those things I don't have a problem with. Like I've said it many times, I think a lot of the things that are taught in the church are good. Mostly good morals, mostly good values. Treat people right, respect people, all people. And I've talked about it before, how that wasn't always the case in the Mormon church, and apparently the Seventh-day Adventist church too. According to this woman that I was watching today on Mormon Stories, they still practice segregation between, for instance, white people and African American people have different congregations. I do not know this. This is what she said. That blew my mind. If that's true in 2026, now in fairness, she was talking about in the early 2000s. So maybe that's gone away. I don't know. But the Mormon church has their own history of that kind of stuff until 1978. I did a video on that several weeks ago because I remember that day so clearly. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, in June 6th, I think it was, 1978, the Mormon church lifted the ban on blacks having the priesthood, which, why was that ban ever in place? I don't get that. Well, you can go back and watch that video if you're interested in my opinions on that. But I guess kind of in conclusion, no, it hasn't completely left me. At 62 years old, I still have things that creep into my head and I'm like, oh, that's bad, that's bad. I mean, I've been faithfully married for 30 years now. I don't have to deal with a lot of that crap. I've always thought that, I have no inclination for it anyway. I don't understand people that cheat. I'm not judging anybody. Well, I kind of am. I'm sorry. If you're cheating on your wife or your husband or whatever, I think we can all agree that's probably not a good thing. But we can approach it from different points of view. But yeah, what I was saying earlier, I got sidetracked, is I feel like I missed out on things that just all American kids, all Canadian kids and I don't mean all Canadian kids, I mean like you're an all-American, you're an all-Canadian. That's what I'm using the term as. I feel like I missed out on some things because I was so scared that I was not just going to be in trouble, but basically be cursed. It's like, oh, that's such a horrible, evil thing. You can't do that. I think that's wrong to pound that into kids' heads. I'm going to finish this video I was watching, and I want to comment more on it, because some of the things that happen in that church, she wasn't clear on if they're still happening, but they were happening when she was there, which is not that long ago. 30 years ago is what, 1996. If you're my age, that's not very long ago. But religions can have such a strong influence on your life, a lot of it in a good way, and some of it in a detrimental way, in my opinion. I don't think kids, and when I see kids, I'm not talking about like 11-year-olds, I'm talking about 16, 17, 18-year-olds, should not be made to feel like they're a bad person and God doesn't like them anymore because they did fool around with their girlfriend or their boyfriend. I think that's awful. And I stand by that. I thought that at the time when I was in there, but they had me convinced. And oh, wow. This is kind of cathartic, getting it out, talking about it. I definitely want to follow up on this more, because I've got a lot more to say about it, but we're at 36 minutes here. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching. I would love to hear your comments and your views on this. I try to, I keep up with the comments. The only ones I'm not responding to are, like, I did a video yesterday about manhood and what's masculinity and toxic masculinity and that kind of stuff. And this one person, their only comment was, all we need to know is who you voted for, except they named the person. Like, really? That's what you got out of this video? I didn't mention anything about that. And I did write, I think it was a him, I wrote him back and said, this makes me sad that the very first thing you go to on a video that has nothing to do with politics is who did I vote for? And of course, I don't talk about that stuff, especially with people I don't know. And I said, it's sad that that's how it is, because it wasn't like that. We didn't care 30 years ago. There are lots of people on all sides of all spectrums that are good people. And anyway, I don't want to go on a rant about that, because I could go on about that for another hour. So I think I'm going to wind it down now. I will try to get this uploaded tonight. Today is Monday, May 18th, 2026. Thanks for letting me spill my guts a little bit. I hope I didn't offend anybody by it. It was frank talk, and I think sometimes that's important. Like I said, I try to keep my videos pretty clean and pretty PG, and I try not to offend people, but sometimes things have to be said. So I hope you all have a great night. Tack för denna gång. Vi snackas igen snart. Yesterday was 17 May, Norway's big day. I'm so excited to go back this summer. I'm so excited. It's been 15 years, and I love my country. Norway is just in my soul, always. Have a great night, everybody. Peace, love.